Welcome to another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. It's NFL Week 14, and it's Ian Cameron with you solo this week. We should have Philip Nelson, maybe even a couple more people joining the show as guests next week. Philip's still away on vacation/work travel. He'll be back next week, but we also might have a couple other guests joining us next week on the show and in the future weeks. Stay tuned for that. But first, we have to get through NFL Week 14, and I'm here to do it this week right here on the show. Again, NFL Week 14. We've only got 5 weeks left of the regular season. Let's get into it. We'll begin with Atlanta and Minnesota. Minnesota Vikings, 6-point home favorites, 45.5 the total in this game. This being recorded on Friday. It was a great Thursday night game. Packers and Lions, 3-0 sweep for me. Packers plus the points. Packers team total over, and we had the full game over in that game as well. It was the great result, so hopefully a sign of another good week ahead. By the way, I don't want to promote the subscriptions too much, but Dub Club, 50% off all sports subscriptions, $75 down to $37.50 for 1 month all sports, 3 months all sports, $200 down to $100, 6 months all sports, $400 down to $200, 1 year all sports, $750 down to $375. All the links are posted on my Twitter X account, @BobanoBets. It's on till Monday, these 50% subscription discounts for all of those options. And we are on a 24-7 run in the NFL. That's right, 24-7 since last Sunday. So now's a great time to get on board. NFL, college football playoffs and bowl season coming up, NHL, NBA, college basketball. You get it all by subscribing at Dub Club. And also, if you don't like the high volume approach at Dub Club, you can check out SoBet, $9.95 per month to get my best bets daily in all sports. And we are on one hell of a run right now at SoBet with the best bet service there on that platform. The last month alone, it's been absolutely tremendous. Let me just pull up the current record for the last month there at SoBet, but it's been phenomenal. It's a tremendous run. Give me 1 sec. I want to mention it. So I'm definitely taking that. There it is. 254, 202, 56%, 49.5 units of profit. 49.5 units of profit in the last month, all sports at SoBet. So get on board with one of those platforms for all to receive every wager on Dub Club in the high volume service, the best bet only service at SoBet. All right, let's get into NFL. I think this is a buy low spot in Atlanta. We all saw Kirk Cousins stink up the joint last week against the Chargers. He was terrible. He did single-handedly lose that game for the Atlanta Falcons. But he's facing his old team this week, going back to Minnesota where he spent so many years. He's going to get another chance at it. He certainly can't play any worse than he did last week, and it'll be interesting to see how he fares. But and also, what I like about this spot maybe for Atlanta is that for Kirk Cousins, this could be his last start if he struggles again. I think because he's playing his old team back in Minnesota, Raheem Morris almost kind of felt compelled to start him here, but he knows if he doesn't play well again, it might be Michael Penix's time here in Atlanta. So I expect certainly a motivated Kirk Cousins. Will that translate into a great performance? That remains to be seen. He is up against a good Minnesota team on the road, a Minnesota team that's won 5 in a row. But look at some of these games, 5-point win at Jacksonville, a 10-point win at Tennessee, which they never really pulled away. They needed an overtime win against Chicago, a 1-point win last week in comeback fashion against Arizona. Not winning games easily or by margin, this Minnesota team, and they've got to be able to win by margin if they're going to cover this kind of a number. So I kind of like Atlanta in this spot, +6. I lean over the total here as well. All right, Saints and Giants. We've got the Saints, 5-point road favorites, 41 the total. So these are two teams that are tough to back. I actually would lean to New Orleans here, even though they're road favorites. And the idea of laying points on the road is not really that appealing with New Orleans, who finally lost their first game under Darren Rizzi since he took over as the interim coach for the fired Dennis Allen. But do you want to back the Giants at home? Look at this Giants run at home this season, especially since the beginning of October. Lose 28-3 to Philly, 27-22 to Washington, 30-7 to Tampa. They have been a terrible point spread team at home, 0-6 straight up. They haven't even covered a number at home yet either, 0-6 against the spread as well. 0 home field advantage. The crowd is pretty much, quit on the season, just like and why would they show up in droves for a Giants team having a miserable season? I'll be honest, Drew Lock was okay, but was he a huge upgrade from DeVito or from Daniel Jones? I'm not so sure about that. I just, it's hard with a team that hasn't won or covered at home to take them. And even though they're a home underdog, I lean New Orleans, but boy, it feels like a better game to stay away from rather than get involved. Two teams playing for exercise. Maybe there's more offense than defense, so perhaps we'll lean over the total a little bit there. Jacksonville, Tennessee. We've got Tennessee 3.5-point home favorites, 40 the total. I don't feel comfortable laying 3.5 with Tennessee, but at the same point in time, I don't know if I can. I know I won't be on Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence out for the year with that vicious hit in the game against Houston last week. They lose 23-20. That being said, Mac Jones came in and played well, but a lot of that was a prevent defense. The Texans were playing with a big lead. Maybe they took their foot off the gas pedal. I definitely think that played a role in his success. Let's see if he can duplicate that here on the road against Tennessee. Tennessee coming off a blowout loss to Washington, 42-19, but it was a pretty tough spot. Let's also forget this team competed pretty well with Minnesota, beat Houston 38-27 on the road before that. And Will Levis didn't have one of his better games, but overall, I think he's played a little bit better in recent games. Tony Pollard's healthy. Having Calvin Ridley back has helped. It feels like a spot for Tennessee to get the job done here. The last time they were favorites at home, they were 3.5-point favorites against New England, but they only won by 3, and that's the problem I have with laying 3.5. One win at home, and it was by 3 points against New England. So I don't feel comfortable laying 3.5, but I do think Tennessee wins the game, if that makes any sense. So not a strong opinion for me on that one. Raiders and Bucks. We've got Tampa Bay 6.5-point home favorites, 46 the total. So Tampa Bay is definitely the better team. Tampa Bay and Las Vegas, there are questions about just what kind of effort they're going to bring to the table, playing out the string, not going anywhere, 2-10 now, just a demoralizing loss to the Kansas City Chiefs last week, 19-17. They played hard. And Aiden O'Connell showed something at quarterback, getting the start against the Chiefs. He played solid. But after a crushing loss where they were in position to win the game, they were in field goal range, the turnover at the end, and Kansas City survives and hangs on. Does Las Vegas have another rally the troops effort in them on the road again this week against a Tampa Bay team outside the conference? I'm not so sure. I worry about this being a spot where Las Vegas no-shows. I'll be flat out honest with that, especially coming off the loss to Kansas City last week. That being said, Tampa Bay is not an easy team to lay points with, not consistently anyway. Last week against Carolina, they didn't even come close covering that number as a sizable favorite. They needed overtime to escape 26-23. They did cover as favorites against the Giants, but Giants were awful that day. And it's just as 6-point favorites or more, they're not always the best team to trust. I don't know if I could trust the Raiders. I will say this. We've seen some over-series history with these two teams. I did see a little perk up in the Raiders with O'Connell last week. Tampa Bay, continues to still have some issues at times defensively. I would lean maybe to an over here at 46. But from a side perspective, it's tough. I don't think I want to back the Raiders in this spot, and I'm not sure I'm ready to lay this many points with Tampa. All right, next up as we continue along here, we've got Cleveland and Pittsburgh AFC North battle, a rematch of the Snow Bowl in Cleveland a couple weeks ago, which, of course, the Browns got the victory. I think it's payback time personally here for Pittsburgh, minus 6.5-point home favorites, 43.5 the total. Short week for Cleveland coming off playing the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football. So that's a negative going against them here in this spot. You've obviously got a Browns team that Jameis Winston is the gift that keeps on giving right before Christmas. Perfect time of year to say that. He gives points to his own team. He gives points to the other team. That's what you got to love about Jameis Winston at this time of year. But here's what I like. I think this total being bet up makes sense. 43.5. I lean over. Cleveland's kind of an over team with Winston at quarterback. They move the ball. Their defense is not exactly great, especially on the road. Winston can move the ball and put up points for the Browns. He can probably put up points for the Steelers too if he has those pick sixes again that burned him against Denver. But the Steelers' defense is definitely regressing. You know, even in the win against Cincinnati last week, and I was on the Steelers last week and the over in that game, you know, Russell Wilson's taking deep shots. They're throwing the ball more. And their defense is capable of giving up big plays in the passing game. I don't think their secondary is playing all that great, especially compared to earlier in the season, the Steelers. And that's definitely something that worries me. So I agree with the move up in the total, 43.5. I think it's got a chance to go up and over the total here in this one. All right, we've got Carolina, Philadelphia. Eagles rolling right now, but 13.5-point home favorites in this game, 46 being the total. It's another over lean for me, but I'm taking Carolina in this spot. I think it's a great sell high spot on the Philadelphia Eagles. They've been rolling. They've been playing great football. They had a huge win in Baltimore last week against the Ravens. I think this is just that ultimate time to maybe jump in and take big points with the Panthers. And let's not forget, Nick Sirianni in his career here with Philadelphia as head coach, not always been good as a double-digit favorite. Carolina's fighting the good fight every week, and you're seeing Dave Canales rather working well with Bryce Young. He's playing his best football of the year. Carolina's got a little momentum. They've covered 4 straight, 2-2 in their last 4 games straight up. They're playing competitive football, beating the Saints, beating the Giants, and in their step-up games against the Bucs and the Chiefs, 3-point losses in spread covering fashion. So I like Carolina here. Too many points with Philadelphia coming off the big win in Baltimore. Historically not been a great double-digit favorite the last couple years, Philadelphia. I think Carolina hangs in this big number on Sunday. All right, New York Jets, Miami Dolphins. Miami 6-point home favorites, 45 the total in this one. I think this is the Dolphins. You lay it. Jets have already ruled out a couple key players on both sides of the football for this game. Another demoralizing loss for them last week in a game they could have won last week against the Seattle Seahawks. You just wonder where they are at right now, the New York Jets. And if you're the Miami Dolphins, after losing to Green Bay, you now have very little margin for error. You got to take care of business. I don't normally like laying 5.5, 6 with Miami, but I think it's probably the only way you can bet it. I don't know. It's, to me, very difficult to make a case right now for the New York Jets. All right, let's get to the late games on Sunday. Seattle Seahawks, Arizona Cardinals. Arizona 2.5, 3-point home favorites, 44 the total. Now, this is one where I actually think it could be an under, and I agree with the move down in the total. I don't think two defenses have improved as much in the last few weeks as Seattle and Arizona. These are two teams playing some really solid defense. It's a divisional game. It's a big game in the division that matters quite a bit. So I could see this being definitely a bit of a low-scoring battle. Actually, 2.5 is the prevailing number. I like Arizona a little bit here at home in revenge for losing to Seattle a few weeks ago, where they didn't play a great game. It was a rough game for the offense. The defense actually played pretty well, but they didn't get enough from the offense in that game. I think the Cardinals, though, back home, Seattle traveling all the way back from New York, playing the Jets last week, and you're on the road again this week. Bit of a tricky back-to-back road spot for this Seattle team, even though I like the way they're playing, especially their defense, the way they're playing. I still like Arizona laying less than a field goal here at home to get the job done after a real tough loss against Minnesota. They should have won last week, Arizona, but I think they have a chance to bounce back here. All right, Bills and Rams. Buffalo, 3.5-point road favorites, 49.5 the total. The only concern I have is Buffalo's the better team, and the Bills fans, who needs an excuse to go out to L.A. in December? Bills Mafia will travel, and they will flood that building with Bills fans. So it's not going to be any sort of home field advantage for the Rams. It never is for the Rams or the Chargers in that building at SoFi Stadium. But this is a horrible spot for Buffalo. It's at least a tricky one, right? They beat Kansas City, bye week, beat San Francisco in the snow game last Sunday night. Sean McDermott, the head coach, and Josh Allen making snow angels on the field together after the win, clinching the division in the process. I mean, it's got the makings of just not a spot where I expect Buffalo's A game. Their A game is good enough to win this game by margin against the Rams because the Rams are very inconsistent. And even last week against the Saints, it was a struggle for them to put that game away. The offense hasn't looked great. The O-line hasn't played great. Matthew Stafford's been a bit erratic. There's no doubt, but I cannot endorse Buffalo in this spot. They're coming off 2 of their biggest wins all year, clinching the division. Detroit on deck next week in a huge potential Super Bowl preview matchup. And in between, you've got this game against the Rams. I think you have to take the Rams or pass. It's not best bet material, but I did take the LA Rams here plus 3.5. This is a huge game for them. They're still in the mix for a wild card spot, and they're still in the mix to win the NFC West because everybody is still alive in that division right now. So it's a huge game for the Rams, and I could certainly, from a spot perspective, this game screams take the LA Rams. There's no question. The only question is, are they good enough to get the job done? All right, Chicago Bears and San Francisco 49ers. 49ers 4-point home favorites in Santa Clara at Levi's Stadium. The total sitting at 44 across the board. I'm on the Bears here. Coaching change uptick, perhaps. As a lot of teams get a bump from the coaching change. I think there's a chance we might see that here for the Bears in this game. No question. They've been competitive, Chicago. They almost came back to beat Detroit. Probably should have and would have beaten them if not for the epic clock mismanagement screw-up from Matt Eberflus that finally cost him his job for good. And like I said, they lost in overtime to Minnesota. I mean, this has been a very competitive Bears team. And now you're asking me with a banged-up, injury-riddled San Francisco team that is struggling, dealing with injuries, coming back from playing in Buffalo last Sunday night to lay 4 with them. I'm not doing that. And I think for 1 week, look, the players were screaming after that loss to Detroit at Eberflus in the locker room from all reports. They wanted him gone. And I think just because they wanted him gone so badly and they were so angry with the way that they fucking he mismanaged the clock at the end of that Detroit game on Thanksgiving. I think you get a great effort, inspired effort from Chicago here for the first game with the interim coach. So I like the Bears here, +4. Put it this way, I can't lay 4 with San Francisco in their current state. I think Chicago is the way to go from a side perspective. I'm neutral on the total. I like Chicago, though, +4 in that one. All right, next up, we've got the Chargers and the Chiefs. This is Sunday Night Football. Kansas City, 4-point home favorites, 43 the total. I'm on the Chargers. And look, Kansas City, maybe a wake-up call that they almost lost to the Raiders, and they keep saying we need to play and put teams away, and we need to find ways to win games a little bit easier than we do, but they never do. They somehow still continue to find ways to play close games, this Kansas City team. This is a big revenge spot for the Chargers. They lost 17-10 at SoFi at home earlier this year. Their defense actually played okay against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense in that game. I like the 4 with the Chargers here. I think even Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert and company know that they kind of got away with one last week against Atlanta. Their offense struggled, but they turned Kirk Cousins into an interception turnover machine, and that basically saved the game for them. They know they have to play better, and they always play the Chiefs tough. They really do, including here at Arrowhead. So I like the Chargers there, +4. All right, Monday Night Football, final game. Cincinnati, Dallas. Bengals, 5.5-point road favorites, 49.5 the total. This is Dallas or pass, and I can't believe I'm saying that with how awful and a bet against every week Dallas was for me just a few weeks ago. But the way it is right now, I cannot lay 5.5 on the road with Cincinnati. I won't do it. This defense is absolutely horrific. 35, 34, 44 points allowed the last 3 games. Don't look now. Dallas has won 2 in a row. One of them was against a bad Giants team on Thanksgiving, but the other one was that win in Washington against the Commanders, winning outright as 11-point dogs. Cooper Rush is solid. I'm not saying he's great, but he's making plays. I actually saw some running game from Dallas last week against the Giants. Rico Dowdle, finally a semblance of the run game working for the Cowboys for the first time this year. And we know the Cincinnati team can't stop anything on the ground, through the air, doesn't matter. So give me Dallas here, +5.5. They're talking and saying all the right things that, hey, we're 5-7. We're not out of this thing yet as far as the wild card. I don't think they're going to make it, but, they're not totally out of it yet. And they're speaking like they believe they can make a run and still challenge to get into the wild card mix. And like I said, with Cincinnati, I just don't know how you make a case for them laying this kind of a number on the road with that defense. And I feel bad for Burrow and the offense. They're playing great, but this defense is not a lay 5.5 with defense on the road, in my opinion. All right, there you go. That's the card for Week 14. Let's wrap it up with best bets. Rapid fire edition of the show. We'll get back to a more lengthier analysis type show when we get the guests back next week and beyond. Best bet for me, I'm going to ugly it up here, and we're going to take the Carolina Panthers +13.5 against Philadelphia. This team's a covering machine. They almost beat Tampa and Kansas City. Flat spot, like you can't believe for Philadelphia, in my opinion, in this spot. I think Carolina keeps this one competitive. And Philadelphia, long term, no good as a double-digit favorite under Nick Sirianni. Carolina plus 13.5 against Philadelphia. Best bet for this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. That is a wrap. Hit the like button on the way out. I'm Ian Cameron. Thanks for watching this edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy. Enjoy NFL Week 14 and good luck. And we'll be back next week for another edition of Ian Cameron's Football Frenzy.